On an early June morning, 700 Marines, rifles drawn, secured the Los Angeles Fashion District. Their orders were clear and unambiguous. Detain and apprehend those sinister tailors and sewing operators threatening national security. Their machines humming quietly in back rooms, their eyes filled with confusion and fear. "I trained to fight insurgents in hostile cities overseas," said Sergeant Kyle Buttons McClintock. "Last deployment, I cleared buildings rigged with explosives. This morning, I arrested 2 guys named Jorge stitching denim. Maybe tomorrow it'll liberate an embroidery store from the tyranny of thread." Across from Sergeant McClintock, outside a fabric wholesaler now guarded like an enemy outpost, Pavet Amberlyn Costa stood silently scanning sidewalks for threats that wouldn't come. She joined the California National Guard to battle wildfires and to rescue citizens from floods, not to stand watch over trembling families clutching fabric scraps in their hands. "This can't be right," Costa said quietly. "My drill sergeant said we defend freedom, not arrest grandmothers carrying tamales. If street tacos are the enemy now, God help us all." In a carefully choreographed show of force, armed vehicles rolled through streets meant for shoppers and school children, not Humvees and armored personnel carriers. Above, helicopters circled, their shadows crossing street vendors selling churros and hot dogs wrapped in bacon, none of whom seemed particularly inclined to overthrow the Republic. On an intersection closed by tanks and surrounded by nervous Marines, Lance Saplo Javier Tex Ramirez, a proud Texan whose grandfather crossed the border 50 years earlier, stood at attention feeling the California sun burning his neck. Around him, fellow soldiers secured corners and alleys from threats he struggled to imagine. "I joined the Corps to protect people," Ramirez said. "But not like this. Last year I was building hospitals overseas. Today I'm arresting seamstresses and tailors who speak Spanish like my abuelo. Grandpa never told me freedom meant pointing a rifle at someone's aunt." A few blocks away, standing against a chain-link fence, Ernesto Garca watched quietly, his fingertips still stained blue from dyeing jeans, wondering how quickly a morning could shift from sewing seams to facing soldiers. He remembered his uncle who harvested lettuce in Salinas, who spoke softly about dignity and work, who read John Steinbeck novels aloud to him in their small house at night. "In this country you come for hope," Ernesto said softly. "But this, today," he gestured at the Marines, the helicopters, the chaos. "There's no dignity in this. There's only guns and uniforms and fear." Ernesto's co-worker, a young woman named Rosa, stood trembling beside him, her eyes darting between Marines and their rifles. She held a small, pocket-sized Steinbeck book tightly in her hand. The Grapes of Wrath, its pages worn smooth from countless readings. "I believed America was stronger than this," she whispered, watching a soldier younger than her nephew zip-tie an elderly seamstress. "If we are the enemies now, what has become of this country?" Meanwhile, across the American heartland, plant managers at Midwest meat processing facilities, staffed overwhelmingly by undocumented workers, watched the news in quiet envy. The Los Angeles garment workers had Marines and helicopters, armored vehicles, and intense press coverage. Why did California tailors deserve such extravagant military theater, while the nation's real concentrations of immigrant labor were largely ignored? One Nebraska plant manager shook his head, puzzled and disappointed. "I got 500 undocumented folks working 2 shifts here, processing pork chops and bacon," he said. "Where's my National Guard? I pay taxes too. Send me a tank or something. Are we chopped liver here?" His coworker nodded thoughtfully, adding quietly, "What does a guy have to do around here to get a couple armored vehicles rolling past the hog pens? We're important too." As the Marines secured Los Angeles, President Trump sat behind his wide desk watching cable news coverage of the operation. The cameras loved the armored vehicles, the crisp uniforms, the dramatic helicopter shots. He nodded approvingly at footage of soldiers marching past storefronts, their boots echoing off empty sidewalks. "Beautiful operation," he told an aide, gesturing at the screen. "Look at that discipline. That's what strength looks like." The aide glanced at the television, where a reporter was interviewing Sergeant McClintock about arresting seamstresses. The soldier's face looked tired, confused. Behind him, an elderly woman sat on a curb, crying into her hands while her grandson tried to comfort her. Yes, sir, the aide said quietly. Very strong. On the streets of Los Angeles, Rosa still clutched her Steinbeck book against the chain-link fence. Ernesto stood beside her, blue dye under his fingernails catching the afternoon light. Pavlet Costa shifted her weight from foot to foot, watching the helicopters circle overhead like mechanical vultures. The cameras captured it, all the uniforms, the weapons, the flags. But they missed the whispered conversations between soldiers questioning their orders, the quiet dignity of workers who'd risen before dawn to stitch America's clothes, and the sound of helicopter rotors drowning out everything else that might have mattered. Please like and subscribe. You'll find this story and other stories like it at Fazler.com. Then remember, don't let them tell you what to do.